first hit single about drunken impotence. And they knew what they were doing. Quite snarlingly delivered. It was saying that this group are prepared to sing lyrics that will make some men uncomfortable.
Never at any point did I do anything that was designed to make men feel uncomfortable. I felt that equality was kind of understood. Felt like the argument was already over and, you know, everyone knew women were equal and what was the big issue.
And Elastica weren't the only ones out there. Britpop was on a roll, with as many girls fronting bands as boys.
There was all these bands, it was very strong, smart females involved in them, and yeah, it was an exciting time.
By now, Brett Anderson's former girlfriend Justine had a new man in her life. But Damon Albarn didn't fit the old rock stereotype either.
There's no other way, there's no other way. All that you can do is what's there.
Blur had a mission to take on all those American bands.
All of us at that time were just sick of hearing about American bands.
Nirvana, everywhere Nirvana.
We wanted our own thing. We're looking back to, you know, the English bands that had really meant something. Damon has a very romantic relationship with what he understands to be Englishness.
Britpop harked back to the 60s. Blur's inspiration were the Kinks, not only for their poetic hymns to British life, but also because of their fascination with the kinkier side of sex.
Damon Albarn was writing songs about people going to the office with stockings and suspenders under their clothes, and wife swapping and all that. And some of that very suburban English sense of sexual decadence was reflected in the government.
Police sources have confirmed that Mr. Milligan was found in his flat wearing items of women's underwear and a plastic bag over his head.
Colchester boy Damon was about to have his horizons broadened.
I guess I was the first person to drag him to, you know, a holiday place that did have the 18 to 30 element. And he was equally horrified and fascinated by it.
This was the rave generation, with cash in their pocket, on E, and on holiday.
Always come out for a week, wind up staying 2 months. I get a sore nose as well, you know what I mean?
It totally exploded. It became the mecca for English clubbers for a holiday.
The Spanish island of Ibiza has been gaining a reputation for the loutish behaviour of young British tourists.
Streets like a jungle, so call the police. Following the herd down to Greece. On holiday, loving the lines.
Probably as someone who's got bullied for playing the violin when everyone else was playing football, he looked at the kind of 18 to 30 lads and thought, you know, I could be one of them. No more bullying. That's the way forward.
Girls who are boys, who like boys, who need girls, who do boys like their girls, who do girls like their boys. Always should be someone you really love.
I think anyone who can write really beautiful songs is not a full lad. Just can't achieve full lad status. But I think what it did was it allowed him to have an image which the British tabloid public could relate to more easily. He was always interested in changing his image, and it felt like that thing was timely at that point.
What became known as Britpop had this sort of class tourist aspect to it, definitely. Like, it was fashionable to eat in greasy spoon cafes.
I get up when I want, except on Wednesdays when I get rudely awakened by the dustman.
Dog racing bizarrely became a signifier for some kind of bizarre sense of authenticity, and then football, of course, enters the frame similarly.
I sometimes feed the sparrows too.
He discovered football. It seemed to me that Damon started going on about football and got into Chelsea, then, you know, discovered that whole thing, and then all of a sudden it just kind of caught on.
I think Damon in his Sergio Tacchini tracksuit top supporting Chelsea was not altogether dissimilar from a kind of Ziggy Stardust type invention. I think to an extent he was playing a role. He was kind of open about that.
He did it in a kind of ironic way, but he also used it as a kind of armour.
But Damon didn't make people feel comfortable because there was some femininity involved in him that he just couldn't mask no matter how he tried, and also his intelligence couldn't be masked either. And, you know, God forbid that any intelligence seeps into the into a rock song.
Blur's songs dealt with those traditional British themes, sex and class. In '94, they were the kings of all they surveyed.
British music has started to re-establish itself. I mean, this is the Brits, as far as I'm concerned. It should be about British music.
And Blur weren't the only group in town. Britpop was in full swing. Jarvis Cocker, with his own ironic take on class and sex. Supergrass, a trio of clued-up lads having fun in the sun. And Suede, who'd broken through to mainstream success, camping it up as if their life depended on it. But this predominantly southern version of Britpop was about to have a rude awakening. For Oasis, men were men, and women were, well...
Can we have some breasts, please, on this screen? Where are you? Come on! Pull your top up and let's have them out for the lads. Check fucking them out! Look at them! Hey!
The old political correctness went out the window. The newsstands were top-heavy with a new generation of magazines celebrating lad culture.
We admitted we fancied women. Political correctness went out the window because if I did anything with a magazine, it was strike a chord. And an ad agency guy said very early on, he said, I like Loaded because it tells me how I am, not how I should be. And that the magazine had an honesty about the male outlook. All we did was we were just honest about the fact that we love girls.
But Blur weren't about to give ground without a fight. It all got a bit silly.
Liam likes to be more in your face than I do. But I'm hard.
Blur had now recast themselves as lads, with an ironic twist. For their chart battle with Oasis, they recruited Loaded's favourite poster girls and chased them around. Ironically, it was war.
The initial vision for Britpop that Suede had was akin to a Mike Leigh film, and I think it was hijacked by various crap bands who turned it into a carry-on film.
By getting to #1, Blur won the battle, but Oasis won the war.
They were giving a little bit of hope to young people in this country. That is me.
Oasis, pin-up boys for New Laddism, now became pin-up boys for New Labour.
And Tony Blair.
And into this new mood stepped a shiny new government on a wave of popular support.
Whatever you think about Blair, I like the fact that he'd been a bass player in a punk band. He had a genuine interest in music.
Tony Blair was the first Prime Minister to have grown up with rock and roll, as his colleagues were keen to remind us.
On May the 1st, a new generation was elected, and that generation, I think, is much more in touch with the kinds of lives that most people live in this country, and music is a vital part of most people's lives.
And this new era was celebrated with a cocktail party at Downing Street, where the great and the good rubbed shoulders with the politicians. It seemed for a brief moment there was nothing left to rebel against, but there were still some sceptical voices out there.
We were invited to number 10. We decided not to go. We didn't really want to have more pictures in the tabloids. And I think Damon felt that he didn't want to be used by politicians in their kind of campaign.